What is going on, Governors? Chisgule here, and we are back for part 2 of the War series, and today we are going to be talking about what role you should play in war. If you like learning about how to completely smash your enemies in war, you should totally like and subscribe, and although you don't have to have watched the last video in this series to get full value, link will be in the description in case you want to watch it anyways. We are sponsored by the makers of Rise of Civilizations. Thank you for that, and let's get rolling. In my opinion, there are 4 essential roles in war, and knowing what role you're going to play is crucial both in your preparation for war and your smashing your enemies. So let's talk about what those 4 roles are and what the implications are. These roles are the point break, the midfielders, the support, and the general. And we'll talk about why each of those things matter in turn. Let's talk first about this thing that I am calling the point break, which I just like that name, and I'm sticking with it. The point break is the person who is leading rallies against enemy cities. And this is because they have a very, very large capacity in their castle. They've probably got this thing maxed at 2 million capacity in a perfect world, so that you do very, very well when you are rallying the enemy. And this person is very likely to have spent a lot of money in the game. They're likely to have a higher level city hall, higher level watchtower, higher level wall, which is important because this individual should probably be toward the front lines when they teleport into the battle, so that they also can potentially shield the rest of the alliance from heavy hits. Now, if you are fulfilling this role, you probably want to have 1 garrison commander in case you yourself are rallied, and you also want to really invest heavily, almost to the detriment of other places, in your commanders that can siege exceptionally well. Because if you're leading the sieges, if you're leading the rallies, then you need to have invested more than anybody else in your alliance. It is your commanders that run that party. So, what are some good commanders for sieging? I would be taking a look at the legendary tier. If you are, in fact, someone who's spending a lot in this game, you should be looking at commanders like Julius Caesar, which have City Killer, Frederick the First, rocking Invasion, and also potentially Scipio in a support capacity with the Conqueror of Africa skill. The other thing that these commanders offer, and you probably ought to run one as the primary, is because they have the Conquering Tree. Now, this talent tree has something kind of interesting in it at the very top, which reduces the number of units that die in combat by 2% at the lowest level. I believe it's 10% at the highest level. Yes, 10% fewer deaths is a really big deal. War is about attrition. And if you can do better than your enemies in that way, then you have gained over them. The other thing that I really like about the whole tree here, honestly, is that these talents are geared toward taking out and protecting yourself against the enemy watchtower. The watchtower is a very, very powerful unit. I'll have a link in the description of videos that talk about it a little bit. You do want to be prepared to take those hits well. Now, I imagine other people have other builds they use for rallying enemy cities. Please do leave those in the comments. I'd love to see what those are, and please share them with others so we can all benefit. So on the garrison front, there are many commanders that you could use for that. I won't talk about it now. What I want to do is talk about the second role in war, and that is the midfielder. The midfielder is attending the rallies being put on by the point break, and they also typically are a moderate spender in the game, and they have very, very strong armies that can be disruptive to the enemy and try to prevent the enemy from getting to where they are going. So if you're rallying a city, in a perfect world, you might have that city surrounded so that the enemy can't reinforce it. These individuals need to have stronger armies, and they need to have a lot of resources to heal back up repeatedly, which is why you might be better off being a mid-tier spender in this game to have those resources. Commanders that are very good in this situation include cavalry units, Minamoto, Cao Cao, Lancelot. You also could use heavy sustain units, units that involve infantry at the legendary tier. You might take a look at Charles Martel, Richard I. You might also be looking at Sun Tzu or Ulji Mundok. Infantry commanders that have some amount of sustain do really well for being in that midfield disruption capacity, and you want to have a lot of movement speed. And that movement speed is really important, which is in part why cavalry is really great. Now, the final role, and this is essential for war, is the support role. In this support role, you're trying to avoid taking the brunt of the damage from enemy armies. You're trying to avoid going deep into enemy territory with a unit that is trying to be highly mobile, because someone with higher tier commanders might outpace you and gun you down, which is a bummer. You're generally staying with some of those midfielders to aid them as they do the things that they're trying to do, to aid them as they're trying to disrupt the enemy. And commanders that are incredibly good for that include commanders such as Joan of Arc, who is dropping a huge round of buffs to all friendly units. Link in the description about Joan of Arc's skills and why her expertise skill is still slamming. You want to be looking at commanders like Boudica, an exceptional generalist, but also is reducing the rage of your enemy and reducing their attack. Other commanders that are also very disruptive include Herman and El Cid, who both have different forms of mechanisms that reduce the enemy's ability to cast the skills they're trying to cast. These types of commanders actually do hinder the enemy pretty profoundly, and by avoiding taking the brunt of the damage, by avoiding using up all of your resources early on so that you have to tap out, you can be incredibly effective. And I want to call attention to Joan of Arc in particular, because I think she is perfect for this task of being in the support capacity, specifically because of the support tree. You've very likely seen my rage tanking video, link in the description. This is the equivalent of what you would do with Joan of Arc. You would go and grab Rejuvenate, which is incredibly powerful for restoring rage, and you grab Cage of Thorns. By generating lots of rage, you'll be using abilities very, very frequently, and Cage of Thorns makes it so that after you use an active skill, you're going to slow all of the enemy armies near you, up to 5 of them, which is huge. You're controlling what is happening on the battlefield, and that role is essential. Now, if you are one of these midfielders, if you are one of these support commanders, one of these support governors, you don't want to be on the front line of where the action is happening. You want your city to be a little bit further back so that you don't get rallied and you run completely out of resources and get zeroed out, which is a dangerous situation. You want to be close enough to the action to participate, close enough to be able to go back and heal and get back in there, but not so close that you put yourself directly in harm's way. Now, the final role, and this role is crucial, is the general. And the general is the person who is leading the action. Now, I don't know about you, but if you have been in war, you probably have experienced how insanely chaotic it is. It's hard to know where you're supposed to be and where everybody's going, what we're trying to accomplish at any moment in time. Holy moly, it's a madhouse. Someone needs to be calling the shots. Someone needs to be dedicated to communicating exactly what is happening, why it's happening, when it's happening, so that you perform well as a team. They are orchestrating the whole show, and my recommendation is that you get into voice chat, because trust me when I say I have done almost a lifetime of online player versus player games. I have achieved top ranks in games like, World of Warcraft Arena and Heroes of the Storm, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Point is, you get on voice, you do better. It's just the truth. It just is a reality. Even if you just listen and you don't talk, if you can be in voice during war, you'll do better. And by having someone who's controlling the flow of where we're going and why, leading the party, you will be much, much better off. So, my friends, what do you think about these roles? I would be eager to hear what your thoughts are, and if it changes the way that you think about how you're preparing for war. For me personally, it's part of the reason that I have invested heavily in commanders like Minamoto and Cao Cao, because I want to be in that midfield role. I've got a lot of resources to sort of stay in that capacity. If I overextend and have my army get wiped out, it's not the end of the world. I've got a high hospital capacity. I can handle it. So I'm gearing out my commanders to do that role. I probably will also record some amount of footage with Joan of Arc in Rage Tank, Rage Smash role, might be more like it, so that you can see kind of what that looks like. If you like these kinds of videos, please do like and subscribe. I really am a new content creator, so that means the world to me. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.